acts like this very much.
Welcome to
Coffee with Toffees.
Let's do this!
Good evening and welcome back to a new episode of Coffee with Toffees, the Dota 2 podcast that's here consistently and every week if I'm not out of town. So my name's Toffees, as you probably know. You can follow me at Toffees_Dota2, and the show is brought to you by none other than DotaCasters.com, a place where you can go to hire casters, amateur to pro, to cast your own personal games. Razer, the maker of the finest peripherals in esports, and of course, Betway.com, the best way to bet and show your knowledge if you're interested in esports. Also, one of the safest. So definitely check those out. Those guys are all guys who are willing to help support small content producers, and we really do appreciate them doing it. That said, let's get right to the good stuff. So today's episode is going to be about the Summit 3. Now, some of you might know that I spent the last week in California. Not LA, is Ontario. It's just outside of California. And had a really great time working with the guys from Beyond the Summit, as well as a ton of other talent, to really make a tournament exactly what I hoped it would be. And it was a very good tournament. I think that most of the players would agree. In fact, I think that I'll keep an eye out for anybody who stopped by the chat channel who may have been there to get their feedback. But what we're going to do today is I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience there, some of the behind the scenes stuff that we got to see and hear about, a little bit of what I showed you live on their stream, as well as some of the other things I saw that I thought was pretty interesting. I'm going to start the show though by saying a couple of things. First and foremost, this is not a Summit sponsored broadcast. The sponsors who sponsored the Summit have nothing to do with this show, so this is sort of a behind the Summit reel. I want to tell you guys exactly how it went. I want to tell you what it was like to be there as staff as well as a content producer, and just kind of let you into a little bit of the experience that is the Summit. Is a very unique LAN. So what I put together is a couple of the videos that showed there that I thought were great examples of the quality of content that the Summit put out. We'll talk a little bit about the technology that they used, which I thought was superior and really great considering the run-up to TI. And then we'll talk just a little bit about sort of the emotions of the house and sort of the functionality of a LAN being held in a home, because that's really what it was. And I'll talk a little bit more about how that sort of all came together. Next week, we're going to start putting together some shows where we are going to start showcasing players and teams who are headed over to the qualifiers, as well as the direct invites as we can. Move into some more, fun interviews, some panels, some things like that. But right now, I'll be honest with you, I landed yesterday and I'm still dead tired from this LAN and need a little bit of time to recover and a little bit of time to put together those larger episodes. So that said, let's start out right out of the gate with the Summit and first impressions. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't know what to expect when I was asked to attend this event. I was contacted by Zyori. He said, we're going to have some content. We want content creators to come out and staff this thing. We want you to come out and drive the car. And, I can't guarantee how much you'll be on camera, but we think that it would be really cool to have people we know instead of people we just arbitrarily hire here to help out with the event. And I said, you know what? That's a great idea. You're paying for my ticket. You're paying for my hotel, and you're giving me a stipend. Why wouldn't I do that? And I got out there, I landed at the airport, I got picked up by the smiling face of Sir Action Slacks, who I think had had a very long day as the first driver to arrive, and got to go to the event. The first thing I saw at the hotel was the fact that they had a massive practice room set up there so the players could train when they were off-site. What they didn't show you guys at the house was that there was a off-site practice area at the hotel where the players were staying that had 20 computers there at all times, available for the players to use. In fact, the original plan was a 24-hour practice room. The players, however, decided they did not need that in the first 2 days, so they reduced it down to be closed for about 6 hours a night. But pretty much anytime a player or a team wanted to play, they could go there and they could train. The second thing they did is they had a deal with a local LAN center about 20 minutes away where if a team wanted to train secretly, they could also go there on the BTS dime and train as long as they wanted. So VG, for instance, didn't want to train at the actual hotel where some people could watch them, so they were transported to the LAN center where they spent a couple of hours training on their own. A few other teams did that as well throughout the week, and that was kind of a cool feature that BTS was willing to pick up the bill without any fuss whatsoever. It was. Monolith Charlie, the manager for EG, is in there. He says it's probably the worst smelling room he's ever been in at an event when it was all over. That is true. A lot of the players started... So at the event, there was the practice room, and then there was a banquet room next door where the players could eat. The players didn't really eat because they didn't want to leave the practice room when they were playing. So by the end of this event, we started just putting the food in the practice room. And what that meant is that you had... we ordered Chinese food a lot, sandwiches, just all these different meals sort of... coagulated into this smell mixed with body odor and lack of sleep and Red Bull. Sweet Jesus, the smell of Red Bull. I love them, and if they want to sponsor the show, they can, but they gave us like your regular Red Bulls. They gave us like this cranberry Red Bull and this blueberry Red Bull and this terrible orange Red Bull that just like you mix all of that together with the Chinese food and the smell of players who probably weren't as sanitary as they could have been, and it did get pretty gosh darn intense. Though in all fairness, I've heard the player rooms when they actually played the competition had a tendency to potentially get just as bad. So maybe Dota players not known for their hygiene but more for their mechanical mastery and skill. So that was sort of the hotel setup. Everyone had their rooms. I had the pleasure of rooming with Alan. You know him as Ryu Uberus, and that was a fun experience. We got to chat a little bit about his background and his hopes for TI upcoming. And then I got to drive a lot. So first 2 days there, I'm not going to lie to you, I basically just drove the car. It was up at 6 a.m., drive teams to and from the house, play some video games in the afternoon on the fun stream, drive everybody home. It was very quiet, and I will say this, though. BTS was on one hell of a schedule. They really did a great job. They brought in camera crews that were independently operated to make the thing look good. They brought in a sound mixer. They had Brian, or KPT as you know him, doing the production management. So he was sort of calling the shots and the transitions. Did a really great job as that role. But I think that they weren't prepared for just how aggressive this patch was going to be. I don't think they were prepared for the 20-minute games and the fact that these games were just sort of happening super fast, super aggressive, and just getting over before you really even knew that they had a chance to get started. I think is probably the best way to say it. So what we started to see was these 25-minute games that would end very quickly, and the sponsor requirements for this tournament were big. They had a lot of need to talk about products. There were a lot of sponsors. Some of them wanted long talking periods between games. And under the previous patch, when games were running from an hour plus, I don't think that that would have been a big deal. If you said for every hour and 20 minutes of Dota that I watch, I have to watch 10 minutes of commercials. That's not that big of a deal. But when the games start to go really quickly, and you're watching 20 minutes of Dota in a shot, and then you get 10 minutes of commercials, that becomes something that is very frustrating for fans to deal with. The fans noticed it very, very quickly. And the novelty of a smooth-running tournament quickly ran off, and I think a lot of you probably know, if you watch the show, that everybody went a little bit crazy with the sellout, sellout, sellout. The Summit 3 is all about the sponsors. And I will say that, yes, from a perspective of a viewer, and even someone in the house to a certain extent, when you put the sponsor commitments up against the 20-minute games, that's where you start to see a lot of trouble. The first 2 days of the Summit... ended at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Previous years, those 2 days of the Summit did not end until almost 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, even later sometimes. So think about the same amount of advertising stretched out over an additional 7 hours. It seems like a heck of a lot less. And I think that that's where the big problem came in. Reddit went crazy. You know, I think that Reddit was right in a lot of ways, that the balance was not correct, but I don't think that that was on the Summit in day 1 and day 2. I think that they sat there, they said, you know what, Reddit has some good points. These games are going very quickly, and they're not even going to best of 3. They're not even going to a third game. Let's start creating content. And they did come to myself, they came to Slacks, they came to Fwash, they came to a lot of us who were on site, and they said, guys, let's put some stuff together. Now, I should caveat a few things here. And that is for the first 2 days, and I'm going to be honest here, and it's not a problem, because when I went, I understood that the chances of creating content was not necessarily a guarantee, but an option, and that I was just there to work as a staff member. So the first 2 days, Slacks, myself, I don't know, I can't speak for them. I know myself personally felt a little bit like, oh man, I'm not going to get a chance to be on camera. I'm not going to get a chance to put up the stuff that we made. In fact, you may have seen the Fear mini doc. I'll show it to you guys tonight again. Myself, I brought on Prove Attitude, who is the editor of a YouTube series called The Dota Difference that I think is really good, and Gorgon the Wonder Cow to be a writer and designer. He created a lot of sort of editing and script style and did a lot of research for these different programs. And we put together 3 different story arcs, one on IG, one on Team Secret, and one on Fear himself, to really kind of enrich the experience at the summit. I pitched them, and the Summit guys just didn't think they had time for content. And that's what they said. We don't know if we have enough time to run these things. Part of it, I think, might have been a quality. Like, they weren't sure if, like, my team was going to create good stuff, and I hope that we proved to them that we could. But they said that the time just wasn't there. They were trying to move matches along very quickly, which we can all agree that they did. Very little downtime between matches. I was very impressed with that. Day 2, however, when they realized, oh no, we need to have content, and the scramble sort of began, I feel like a lot of us who were there as staff sort of sat back and said, man, I wish we had had time to think about this ahead of time. I think that the content that we came up with was good. This Disruptor video, for instance, by Slacks, or Fwash's here at the Summit were great, but I know that they felt they were a little bit more rushed and a little less prepared than they would have liked. I know Fwash wanted players perhaps to sing the song, maybe some live footage shots, and had to sort of go with the meme feel because of the fact that there wasn't a ton of prep time in that particular instance because we didn't know what was going to get in and what wasn't. So I think that the Summit guys did a great job of responding. I do want to say that there were some content ideas that were definitely out there initially that they weren't sure they were going to use. So those of us who created content sort of put them on the back burner because we didn't want to overinvest hours that weren't going to be used. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a couple of the popular videos I thought content creators did a great job with during this tournament. The first one is going to be the Story of Fear. It is a documentary style, I don't know how to explain it. It's a mini doc about Fear, his removal from the team, or not removal, his coaching position, moving into the last TI, and where he's at now as we go into Summit and the TI5. So I thought it was a really good piece. This was done, I did the voiceover work, but it was done by Prove Attitude and Gorgon the Wonder Cow, and I think it deserves a good look. So check it out. For those of you listening on the podcast, you'll hear it. I think it'll be strong. And the voice should still play on the podcast. If you want to see the full video, you can go to Beyond the Summit YouTube or look up this the highlight for this episode on our YouTube. Either one will work. So without further ado, let's switch over to the transition. And this is Beyond the Story of Fear from Beyond the Summit 3, Prove Attitude, and Gorgon the Wonder Cow.
For the most part, I really want to get on a team that's here to win it instead of having roster changes like having so much recently. I want a solid team, and I want to be able to compete in lands, and actually win.
Clinton Fear Loomis is so integrally woven into the fabric of Dota history that he's known to fans and peers by another moniker, Old Man Dota.
Omni Slash coming through, brings down 4, make it 5, the old man wipes them out!
He was first sponsored in 2006 when his current teammate Sumail was only 6 years old. Despite his infamous intuition, dedication, and raw talent, he struggled to find stability for years.
They seem to be confident that they can beat you today. Do you think they're right?
Well, I'm definitely ready. I mean, you can be confident all you want, but you never won a land for a reason, son.
Oh. Well,
in 2014, it seemed that stability was found when his squad was signed by Evil Geniuses and became one of the top performing teams on the globe.
Took us 5 games, but EG tallies that 3rd win and walks away our winners.
But on the cusp of the 2014 International, Fear's team suffered a devastating roster issue. Only this time, it was Fear who would not play.
I don't know if my injury will come back for the most part. Like, it can come back at any moment.
Right now, I still have problems with my arm, and I don't know how long they are going to last. I might have to take a longer break than expected. I don't know. I still need to talk to the doctors about that.
Fear's arm couldn't handle the strain of a pro gaming lifestyle. He was unable to maintain the rigorous 6 to 8 hour a day practice schedule needed to be prepared for what was, at the time, the largest prize pool in esports history. For the first time in his career, his team was one of the tournament favorites, but he was sidelined as a coach. Ensuring that his team was here to win, he helped to hone their edge and boost their morale, even as a replacement was brought in to play in his place. But the lost opportunity would weigh heavily on any competitor. Even without their most experienced star, Fear was confident in EG's ability to perform.
Predictions. Well, I predict we're going to get top 6.
They see him here. He's running in. Here comes the stun.
Ultimate. Chronosphere is going to come online very shortly. He's only on Dragon Knight, though.
Stun.
And Ortiz is going to stun himself. He's almost dead right off the bat. All this burst damage. Of course, he has the Age of the Immortal, so he'll be back very shortly. But Timbersaw is silenced. He can't do anything in this fight. The question is, does he have buyback? The fight continues. Enigma gets stunned, trying to run away. Super has a haste rune. Looks like he might be able to finish it off with his dragon. Oh, the Breathe Fire finishes him off. And this might be Rax. This might be game even.
Good game is called. EG's out.
Goodness.
EG goes home with 3rd place. They were just a little too far behind. They needed.
1 year later, Fear's roster has changed, with some of his former teammates moving to Team Secret, often cited as one of their biggest competitors. And now, moving through the Summit 3 and looking toward the International 5, Evil Geniuses are still ranked among the top 3 teams in the world. And after years of waiting, Old Man Dota is finally coming back with the team he wanted. A team in it to win it. Welcome back. So that's an example of some of the content that was created going into the event that took a little bit of work to get up on the air, but I think that it was good stuff and really should have panned out or did pan out and was a nice feature. And that's the kind of thing that if you watch the show, I've been asking for in Dota for a very long time. In tournament formats, the kind of story arc that makes you feel connected to heroes, to players, to teams, that makes you kind of want to watch. So the content was there. It was then aired. So the Reddit threads came out, and I will tell you this, that the guys from Beyond the Summit responded in spades, man. They put together some really good stuff. They were actually up. I think I was tired the next day because I think I slept on the couch while they were filming it. They made the Wayne's World spoof video the night after day 2 in response to everything. Like, they stopped, they looked at what was going on. They said, you know what? This makes sense. The fans, they have a point. Let's do something for them in response to what they're saying. And they made that Wayne's World spoof video that I think did a really good job of getting the sponsors in, but also poking fun at the situation. And the fans responded very well to it. So day 3 was a totally different monster. So day 1 and day 2, there's a couple of issues to remember. A, we're powering through games. It's a patch. We were unaware of how it was going to affect game times. It went very quickly. And the teams were all still in it. So nobody was really in a point where they were like, I want to cast. Because day 1 you were playing, day 2 you were playing the next day. So, you didn't have these long breaks scheduled ahead of time. VG was the team that secured the long 2-day break. And they weren't interested in doing the casting thing. Ice was asked and said he had no interest in doing it whatsoever. So that's a tough day to pull that in. Then we get to day 3, and you just start to see everything sort of take off. We see pros casting. We start to see videos coming out. They played the Fear Doc. We did the house tour, which I had the privilege of leading. And I'll be honest with you guys, I had a little bit of a freak out moment afterwards during the house tour. I thought, it's a camera. It'll be cool. It'll be nice and smooth. And then afterwards, Dakota Kato guy stopped me and said, you realize that there were 110,000 people watching. That's equivalent to filling up an entire NFL football stadium. And I sort of just sat down and was like, whoa, mind blown. And that was a pretty cool moment. And then we did a little more content throughout the day, and I thought that there was some really great stuff that sort of started to develop from that day 3 on. Now, before I get into day 4 and some of the other content that came out for some really great stuff and ideas that I know were floating around there, I do want to talk about the technology, because one of my features on day 3 is I talked about the SSD hard drives that they utilized. And that was just one of the things the Summit did to sort of step above and beyond that wasn't really revealed to fans. They bought individual hard drives for every single player. So basically what would happen is on the first day of the tournament, before we started actual play, Hotbed did an interview with each player. And then what would happen is each individual player would go to the practice rooms and they would put all of their Dota settings onto this hard drive, as well as music if they wanted it and other things, so that between matches, instead of changing your settings and testing everything out and having your Razer Synapse saved or your SteelSeries Synapse or whatever system or sponsor, whatever drivers you use, you literally pushed a button, or the admin did, pushed a button, popped out an SSD hard drive, slid the new one in for the player who was sitting down, and voila, just like that, you plugged in your keyboard and your peripherals and you were ready to go to town and fight. That was another reason we didn't see as much content the first 2 days, because it just made the switches so incredibly fast. The content was unnecessary. So that was a really cool thing they did. The second thing they did that a lot of folks didn't talk about at all during the event is they built all of their computers from scratch. The last 2 summits, they've had sponsors. I think it was iBuyPower, and I don't know who the other was. And both times there were tons of issues with the computers. It wasn't, and I don't want to say it's iBuyPower's, that iBuyPower doesn't make good computers. However, when you get a computer sponsor, they tend to have LAN computers that they send from event to event to event. Those computers get used a lot, they get setting changed a lot, they get jostled and traveled a lot, and they just aren't as dependable as the rig that you built yourself at home is. So Summit said, okay, we're going to work with that, and they built 40 computers for this event. 20 at the house and 20 at the hotel, all made by hand by the BTS guys, so that each computer was at the maximum functioning capability for this tournament. We had 2 issues the first day that I'm aware of. One was because a monitor wasn't plugged in quite right, and I believe the other one was just a computer had a power issue, and all they had to do was swap a cord and it was good to go. So as far as I know, that was it, which when you compare that to every other LAN tournament that I have watched, that's pretty mind-bogglingly good. So that was another thing that Summit did to impress me. The other thing that I thought was really cool is the monitors. You didn't get to see them, but the monitors are 24 inches. I think it was 190 refresh rate. They were the exact same monitors that are going to be used at TI. So this was the first tournament where literally the guys set up the computers, from what I understand, to the same specs that would be used at the International, which really gave, I think, players an advantage to kind of test those things out first. Now, I heard rumors that some of the players didn't even like the 24-inch monitors, that they were used to playing on 21s, and this was sort of an eye-opener to those players that maybe they need to make some adjustments at their home training settings, because there's a big difference between a 21 and a 24-inch monitor. So I would assume that any player who had issues with that will definitely have their sponsors buy them some new monitors to train on, and those, I will say, the monitors were gorgeous, by the way. So that was pretty neat to see how much behind the scenes stuff went into the Summit as far as technology is concerned. Were there issues? Yes, I would be remiss to say that it was perfect. There were some internet connectivity stuff. The on-site Wi-Fi for everybody who wasn't a player was brutal, to say the least. The internet at the hotel wasn't as strong as it could have been, not really beyond BTS's control there. If somebody, say, downloaded a program or wanted to, I don't know, watch a Twitch stream while we played, everyone at the hotel would start lagging. So there were some tech issues, but for the first time that they did this at this scale, I think it was a phenomenal success, and I think all of the players would say that. In fact, I heard from some players that normally players do not want to cast when it comes to an event like this. However, they were so impressed with what Summit was doing in the first 2 days that's why you saw so much player casting in day 3 and day 4. They actually came forward and said, we're sorry that the fans are getting on your backs about all this. We want to cast and try to help out because we think you guys have done a really great tournament here. And that is absolutely true. You guys know, I've talked about it before, I'm an actor. I've worked in a couple of different projects before, so I have been on sets. I have been around films. I haven't gone to a lot of LAN events as staff, and hopefully that changes soon. But I've seen hospitality. I've seen a lot of functionality. I've seen a lot of behind the scenes for these large sort of multiple moving wheels sorts of deal, and this was very smooth. There were 2 girls, Joy and Grace. I won't give last names since they're both fairly shy about being out in the public eye. But they handled all of the food and all of the, what's what I'm looking for, hospitality stuff. I believe Puppy broke his glasses and they ran out and did everything they could to get them fixed for him to play. If a player did not like the food that was ordered that day, then a driver took them to the restaurant that was nearby or a restaurant of their choice and bought them the food that they wanted. Like, it was really above and beyond. Anything that the players wanted was taken care of for them. And I will say this, on a side note that's a little bit funny, I guess it never occurred to me just how much a player loves Starbucks or Jamba Juice, because anytime like staff needed a player to say cast something or do a favor for them, they'd be like, we'll buy you Starbucks, and the players would be like, sure, I'll do it for Starbucks. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, you placed like, I don't know, third in the DAC? Don't you have a lot more money than doing this for a Starbucks Frappuccino? But who am I to judge, man? It was a hilarious thing to see, and the players, I think, they just need an excuse to get on the couch sometimes, and it was a lot of fun to sort of see the barter going on. Plus, hey, every time that I made a run to pick up Frappuccinos, I got to steal a little coffee myself, and I'm not going to complain about that bonus. So that was sort of the day 3 experience. Food was great, experience was good. Very busy, very crazy, a lot of work, very tiring. I was really happy that I was able to, with the help of Sir Action Slacks, by the way, who helped give me the idea, I was able to come up with the Behind the Summit sort of live from idea that I think went really well. I know I was wearing a suit and a shirt. Everybody made fun of me for that, but I wasn't wearing a tie, so it was sort of like I was in casual mode. But it was a lot of fun. Now, as we moved on to the next day, Fwash had been hard at work, and I think that she put together probably one of my, I think it was my favorite, besides maybe the Wayne's World parody, video at TI, and we're going to show that to you. So those of you who are listening on the podcast, you'll enjoy the lyrics, I hope. For those of you watching on the stream, I will play the video as well. But this is a video called Here at the Summit 3 by Fwash. You can find her over on her channel. It's just search Fwash, YouTube, Dota 2. And she's got a lot of great videos. She is famous for the Aladdin parody where Aoi sings about what sings to Universe, and it was a phenomenal video that I think we all loved right when EG sort of had their reformation, and this was another one that sets the bar high for her ability and her quality production. So here it is. Without further ado, this is Here at the Summit 3 by Fwash.
IG and maid dresses, anime and flowers, a stream that's online for almost 12 whole hours. Blinding bright pants and hypecast from LD. Wow! Here at the summit we have all these things. Mario Karting with all Vici's players, Aladdin and Jasmine and this baby Rager. From me Pastor to the girl of your dreams. Here at the summit we have all these things. Pinoy Dota, Begot and LGD Gaming. Persian Prince Salt Shaker, plenty of flaming. Poker and Melee and some Lethal League. Here at the summit we have all these things. So when your game's paused or your team feed, if you're just feeling mad, just think of what's here at the summit 3, and then you won't feel so bad. Yellow Purge Gamers, Sinden Iori, Cuddle Guy Suns Fan, and Steve Aoki. Grills grabbing food in the back of the stream. Here at the summit we have all these things. Ice doing some lewd things with his hand. A newlywed tall guy and this random old man. Pros that know how to drop sticks for the cheese. Here at the summit we have all these things. When you throw games and your team pings and you're feeling sad, just think of what's great at the summit 3. It's really not just all ads.
Alright, so that was the video by Fwash, which I think was a really great example of the content that was created on site. Now, the reason I wanted to show you that, again, is because I want to talk about what I saw when she was building it. I was hoping she might stop by the show tonight, but I know that everybody who just was at the summit is exhausted. They all flew in, a lot of them today even, and I think that they're all just on their backs, tired out of their minds. So Fwash wrote the lyrics, from what I understand, the day she got there, and then did all of the editing and design on site, and put that video together in basically a day and a half. And it was crushing. It was phenomenal. It caused every meme that you could imagine at the summit came out. It was pertinent humor to the previous 2 days. It's a shining example of what you get if you trust content creators in our community to do their best work, and that's exactly what she did. So kudos to Fwash. She did a great video. One that honestly, had she put it on her YouTube and made it herself, probably would have made a good deal of money. But instead, she chose to do it for Summit 3 content. So I'm going to give her a plug. If you go to patreon.com/Fwashy, I believe it is, you can support what she does. This is her Patreon thing for the month. But this is an example of a content creator who could have run with it and made a good amount of money on her own, but chose to run it for the Summit 3 because she believes in building the community. And I thought that was a really cool thing and definitely deserved a feature there. But she was an example of the content creators and the people who just loved Dota that were hanging around. Renessa did a great job. She was in the players' room almost all day, just working her butt off, making sure the players were happy, and just sort of, it felt a lot like grinding it out. One of the beefs that I had with the Summit, and it's not a beef because it shouldn't be a beef because these people signed up with understanding that this was going to be their job. But when you had to work in the practice room at the hotel, it was very difficult to get to the house. And what that meant was that those folks who came out, it was Renessa, Prove Attitude, and Fwash, got very limited time hanging out at the actual BTS house, rubbing elbows with the players, sort of seeing the things that went on. And it was a bummer for me because I think that they do some of the best work out there in Dota. That said, I want to give them mad props for being there, for putting it in the work, and just getting to the house whenever they could, even though they were dead tired, and hanging out and having a fun time. Fwash and Prove were both playing Gang Beasts with the rest of us constantly, and it was just too much fun. So great job for them. I think that they did some great work. And what that does brings us to day 4. Now, day 4 was interesting. I know that was sort of Slacks was super prepared to put out some really big stuff. He had some ideas, like there was a cash cab idea that was in the works that I thought was going to be amazing if we had time to get that in. He had a bunch of other content ideas that there just wasn't enough time to do. And that is an example of, I do have to say that if you want content creators on site, they need head notice to really kind of, maybe just a time frame. I think that if we had been called and said, hey, we're going to give you 10 minutes total of content while you're here, pitch us some ideas, we would have had some really great, some even better stuff than what we did have going into this. And I think that Slacks, because of his style, is someone who does require a little bit of work ahead of time to sort of put the editing together. That said, he was able to do a Disruptor skit that was pretty big, everybody really liked. I'm going to play it as we talk a little bit.
Every tournament out there has its host of problems. Technical problems, delays, disruptions. But
now, as he's going through this, and I'm not going to play the whole thing with just the big screen because of the fact that I want the podcasters to not understand what's going on, but I will tell you this. Slacks literally taped this and sent it to production in one day. That's how good the editors were, that's how good the camera people were, and that's how dedicated Slacks was to getting this done. A lot of folks see Slacks as sort of a goofball, which he absolutely is. I made great friends with him while I was there. He is definitely a goofball, but he is very serious about his craft, and he is very serious about making content for people who enjoy it, and that's what he did here. It was a little bit goofier than I think he was hoping for, but it came out very funny, and the fans really enjoyed watching it. It was a nice change of pace from the seriousness of a lot of the stuff that was coming out during this tournament. And it was really pertinent to what was going on, especially with the fact that the last 2 summits have had so many technical issues. So kudos to him on creating that, and I will say this. He did tell me that I think that this was a little bit more goofy than he wanted to go. He was really hoping that his time at the summit could be used to sort of make himself, show that he's not just Sir Action Slacks, the funny guy from the stream, but really somebody who's valuable to events like this. And I think that while the video was typical Sir Action Slacks, he proved by being there and the stuff that he did on site, his work ethic was phenomenal. He was insanely polite and insanely helpful at all times. He was actually a pleasure to work with, and that's something that I think is definitely worth saying, because a lot of people tell me a lot, like, it's Toffees, I don't get this Slacks guy, he seems like he's just a big joke, nothing serious to him, and I can tell you right now that's not true. In fact, on top of that, his girlfriend actually came out to the event with him and spent the entire time driving. So she came with no intention of being on camera, only to drive, and she did that a heck of a lot because of the fact that there were points where Slacks and I were both taping or recording or trying to make content at the same time, and she would just do constant runs to and from the house and the hotel to make sure that the driving got done without us having to walk away or stop making the content that we were really excited about making. So that was a really cool thing that she did, and I think that was a great part of the summit. Now, That takes us over to the sort of back end of the summit. I thought it was a great event. I thought it was very smooth. It's one of the smoother lands that I've watched. I will say this. I didn't get a chance to watch a ton of the games. I was either creating or driving or doing fun stream stuff. It was a very busy, tiring time, but it was a great experience. I do think that the games were a bit short. Will they change that before TI? I don't know. I think that they've made a couple of changes to heroes in a patch yesterday, but will there be any major changes to the meta? Honestly, I don't think so. I think for an event like TI, shorter games may be better, because we saw from the summit that 25-minute games with quality content in between them is as marketable, if not more marketable, than an hour and 20-minute games with no content whatsoever. So hopefully that's what we see. Now, for those of you who may not have caught it, where your head was under a rock or something, Secret did win 3-1 against EG on the back end. EG looked very, very strong going into Game 2 against them. But I think we can all agree that the three monsters to come out of this tournament were VG Gaming, Secret, and EG. And I would argue that VG Gaming is still a monster to be contended with, because Secret and EG both felt to me, and I could be wrong here, that they had specifically prepared in this tournament to go up against VG Gaming. They had focused on each other, and especially if I know the EG guys, they're very cerebral. They like to study. They like to do work. They prepared for everyone, but I think that both of those teams, Secret and EG, took an extra time to focus on beating VG Gaming, which they both did, and they both did very strongly in the games in which they beat them. So this tells me that there is a massive fight for the top three, and then it also tells me that the fight for the rest of the positions is going to be furious as we go into this big push towards TI. I think that we're going to see some fun stuff at the X Games, ESL 1, and the qualifiers to really prep us out for what's going to be, in my opinion, the single best TI that we have ever seen. It's going to be phenomenal, and I am very, very, very excited. I will also say this. On my experience at the Summit, the players and the staff, the people who you watch on a daily basis that are what we would call the royalty of Dota, are almost to a person significantly nicer, friendlier, and down to earth than you would expect them to be. I will be honest and tell you that at the there was a moment on the second night when I was sitting at a poker table with Cinderin to my right, Merlini to my left, Purge across the table. Actually, he was on the couch watching us play. That I sort of just sat back. And I think Gods was sitting there. It was just sort of a who's who of Dota casters and analysts. And I sat back and I went, wow, I didn't even realize I was sitting at a table with these guys. That is how just open and welcoming they were to newcomers like myself and Slacks into this sort of club of Dota Elite. I'm not saying I'm Dota Elite, but I'm saying that they welcomed us into the house as if we were one of them. And that was a really cool thing that the whole staff did. And the players generally followed along in the same rules. I will also say this. Dota players smoke like chimneys, man. I'm not against... I mean, I should phrase that. I am against smoking. For those of you who don't know, I used to smoke 2 packs a day in college, through college, and out of college. And then I quit as a wedding gift to my wife. So smoking still bothers me just because the cravings never go away. So when I'm around smokers, it can get a little bit difficult. That said, dude, these guys smoke a lot. Chain smokes before games, chain smokes mid games. It's pretty crazy. So I think that does attribute a little bit to the amount of stress that they must be under on a daily basis. But that's really my Summit experience. I think in a nutshell, if I were to sum it up, I would say that it was exhausting but exciting, and it was really a lot of fun. If they ask me back in December, I will 100% be there. I have, like I said, worked on sets in a lot of capacities, and I've never been in a studio that I felt as comfortable and was as friendly as it was at Beyond the Summit. And I really thank them for having me. I thank them for putting on a good tournament. I regret that the first 2 days had so much controversy that it overshadowed the quality of tournament that we got from the Summit. This, in my opinion, with the SSD swaps, the home-built computers, was a bar that I think is being sort of set for the future. And I think I really, really, really hope that other tournaments start to pick up on some of these crazy innovations that the Summit guys have made. And in my opinion, and you take it for what you will, I have sponsors on the show. If it means an extra 5 to 10 minutes of advertising for me to have the players have a better time, to create swap outs on SSDs, to get better technology and better creation and better content, I'll take it because I think that it helps the sport grow, and I really think that they did a good job. Twitch chat asking a couple of questions. If you guys want to throw some out there, I will answer them live before we sign out. Is the Summit 4 in December? You know, I guess I'm just sort of postulating that it is. I know there's going to be a Summit 4. They sort of mentioned it briefly. The last one was in the winter, so I would assume that it's going to be December again. I don't know for sure. That's just me going off of previous experience. Toffees, how do you feel about Empire with their recent win over VG? Here's my thing about Empire. Empire Twitter guy, you can be mad at me if you want, and I hope to God Empire proves me wrong, but this time last year, you guys may remember on the show, leading into TI, I was all about Empire. I pumped them up, I talked about how great a team they were, and then they let me down at TI so hard, I looked like an idiot. And what I came to the decision was, because I watched them over the rest of the year, is that I think that Empire is a patch team. Empire accelerates at the beginning of a patch because they're willing to take risks, they play incredibly aggressive, and they're willing to try things that other people haven't quite figured out yet, but maybe Empire hasn't quite mastered either. And they come in and they play strong, and they play brutal, and they play fast, and I love watching them, man. I absolutely love watching Empire play, and that's why I hyped them so much before the last TI. That said, I feel like as a patch grows, and the other teams like EG, I like to think of EG as sort of like the Harvard graduates of Dota, right? They're the ones who always seem like they're thinking about the next strategy. They're not very cavalier about their process, in my opinion. Once those guys start to really wrap their head around the dynamics and the mechanics of the patch, then I think teams like Empire start to fall off. I hope that's not true. I hope Empire continues their romp, and I hope that they finish in the top 4 or 5 of TI. I really do, because I've been rooting for them for years, and they're one of my favorite teams to watch play. That said, I'm not going to go out on a limb for them like I did last year. I think that they have to prove that they're not just a patch team, because last year they let me down pretty hard. Do I think that the format was good? It seemed like it benefited EG a fair bit. So regarding the format, here's the deal. I don't think that I am qualified to comment on a good format or a bad format. I think that there's two people who can. Players and organizers, really. I mean, fans, we get to watch the games no matter what happens. Yes, maybe if best of 5 for 6 weeks straight would be a terrible format for all of us to watch, too much Dota. But at the end of the day, the players need to feel like they're comfortable and that they're getting fair treatment, and the organizers need to feel like they don't have to have a super long event that's impossible to host or a super short event that doesn't make any money. The format that they used may not be the best, but I think that for the time frame that we were in, there was very little complaining, other than the fact that the winners of day 1 had to wait 2 days to play the next round. That is the only thing that I think was really kind of a downer, but everything about the format worked for me. I could maybe see giving the winners bracket winners a 1-game advantage, but I think that the fact that they don't have to go into the losers bracket and fight their way out against the 3rd best team in the world is advantage enough to a certain extent. So, was it a bad format? No, by no means. I think it was strong, I think it was fast-paced, and I think it worked. Could it be better? Maybe, but I don't think very much. I think it was pretty close to as solid a format as you can have for what this was. What do I think TI5 distribution will be like? I think the prize distribution will be about the same as it was last time. I think that the percentages will be the same, and the numbers will be higher. Let's say it that way. Out of all the innovations at the summit, which improvement would you most want other LAN TOs to adopt? I think that the SSD personalized hard drive is the #1 thing that other tournaments need to adopt. It's not that expensive. Yes, it is pricey up front, but put it in perspective this way. The summit bought, I forgot how many it was. There was one for each team, so they bought a metric shit ton, for lack of a better word, of SSDs. But those don't go home with the players. Those stay with the organization. So that means that until they reformat their systems for the next 3 or 4 summits, they can use the same solid-state hard drives. So it's not like it's that huge of an investment. It is reusable to a certain extent. And the amount of time it cuts down on for transitions, the player comfort, the fact that you don't have to go through configuring every single time is massive. And I think that that's the biggest change that they can make. The second one, I think, would be building your own computers, because I am tired of having long pauses because a computer breaks in the middle of a tournament. All right, so that's about it for time for today's show, guys. I'm glad that you joined me. If you're here live, I appreciate you being here. If you are listening to the podcast, guys, we really appreciate you supporting. Don't forget to go ahead and review us on iTunes. That said, support our sponsors, dotacasters.com. Razor Gaming and Betway.com. Really, they have invested time and money into the show to help me create content. A small content creator get ahead is really the best way to say it. A big shout out to them, a big thank you for all the time and effort that they've put into making this thing great. For those of you who did not know, the prize pool distribution for the Secret Finals was Team Secret got $115,000, Evil Geniuses got $61,000, and VG Gaming at third got $35,000. So everybody who was there did get some money. The last place teams did get $6,700, so about $6,800, at least to cover some costs and things of that nature. So everyone got paid. It was a great tournament. It was a lot of fun to be at. And I would love nothing more than to go back. I will also say, and here's a bit of a spoiler, drop it a little bit early, is that if you guys live in the San Francisco area, I just found out that I will be in San Francisco on May 30th to shoutcast the CSL Collegiate Championships. So stop by, check it out. I'll be at the Foundry, the same place that I believe that the Red Bull after party was. I'm getting more details sent to me as we speak from the president of the CSL, but it looks like yours truly will be flying out to San Francisco for that event. So get your tickets, come see me, say hello. I will sign signatures, I will give high fives, I will do the truffle shuffle with you if that's what you ask. But it's going to be a good time, and I hope that if you're in that San Francisco area, you join me for it. That said, guys, it was a wonderful time spending it with you, and I am really glad to be home. I'm really glad to get some sleep. I should close with this, though, and I'm excited about it. I pitched the morning show idea. A lot of you might have heard me talking about on the show in the past to a lot of people at the summit. The idea of setting up an area in front of, say, the red carpet where the players come in, where we could do a show half an hour to an hour before TI starts. This sort of like a good morning TI. Come in, sit down with Toffees, talk to analysts and players, talk about the day before, talk about the day to come, and sort of see the pros walking in behind us as the show goes on. People seem to like the idea. In fact, as I walked out the door, Valat stopped me and he said, "Toffees, your morning show, good idea. You do, we support. You should start campaign." So I'm starting the campaign. We hope that Valve will pick it up. So if you think it's a good idea, start tweeting, start talking about it, put it on forums, say, "Hey, Toffees, that morning show idea sounds like a great idea." Because even if it's not me, someone has got to do it. I think it's going to be a great, great thing and really add to the event. So get the campaign going. Let's do it. That said, guys, wonderful evening. Have a great night. And as always, Toffees out.